So now that we have a good grasp of InDesign, I wanted to finish up the tools on the left over here. Now, you'll notice that we've created all the stuff in the previous lessons without touching some of these tools over here, and that's perfectly fine. These tools are here in case you want to use them. However, you don't need to use them if they don't work with your workflow. So in this scenario, in the scenario that I've been creating over these last few units, I actually didn't use a lot of these because they don't usually work into my normal workflow. However, that doesn't mean they won't work into yours. So I'm going to be going over some of the most important ones over here and some of the ones that I think you guys might find some value in. The first one sort of ties into what we did in the last lecture, which was on colors and color palettes. And that is this little neat one down here called the color theme tool. What you do is you basically just find an image. When you click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to create a color palette based on that image. So if we take a close look here, you'll notice that we have the light blue from the sky. We have this yellow, which is sort of the buildings in this scene. We have this dark red, which is sort of like these colors, and this sort of brighter red, which I could put maybe as here, and maybe some of these colors as well. And so this basically creates a palette that is the entirety of the image. So if you wanted to create, for example, like a thumbnail or something in here where you're trying to use the colors of the image in the design, you can just use the color theme tool, and it's going to grab the 5 colors from this, and that's usually how many you want in a color palette. Now, if we click the drop down button here, you'll see that we can actually look at this in different ways. So this right now is colorful. It's going to try to grab as many different spectrums as possible. We can go bright, which is going to grab the brightest of the colors in here. So you'll see we have this magenta, which is kind of like this dress back here, that color. We have this dark blue, which again is probably maybe like down here into the shadows. And then we kind of get this bright red and this bright yellow. And so it's the same sort of color palette, except in a brighter, happier tone. You can also go in a darker, sadder tone right here, where it'll mute all the colors that it finds. A deep tone, where it kind of tries to find really pure colors, and that sort of adds in the green of the stop sign and the green of these trees over here. And then a muted tone, which is going to be very, very kind of, it's not dark and dreary, it's just nothing is bright and poppy. It's just sort of like mid-tones, which you can see there's actually a lot of like sort of flesh-colored tones here. And so what you can do after you find one you like, let's say we like the bright one, is you can click on this button that'll add it to the swatches. So let's go ahead and reopen our swatches panel right here. And you'll see that once I click this button, it's going to add all 5 of these into a folder named Bright Theme. And of course, you could click on this and rename it to whatever, you know, like Italy picture. And so now what we have is we have this set of swatches that are saved for us to use throughout the document. So let's say that we wanted to create some text right here. Let's make it really big and bold here so we can see it. And let's make it bold, and then let's call this like, I don't know, Italy. But let's say we wanted to use the colors of this. So now we can highlight this, and let's say we wanted to go with the sort of light blue here. And you'll notice that when we get to the sky, it gets very close to what the sky color is. It actually almost disappears in some parts. And that's because that's exactly what it was sampled from the sky. But now we can bring this color down to here in the bottom left, and you see it really fits with the palette here. And we could even do something like sort of neat here, as Italy is a 5-character word. So let's go ahead and go 1 letter for every single part of this palette. That's going to be the light blue. That one's going to be the yellow. That one is going to be the final red. And so now, even though this looks kind of crazy right here, and you can see the blue is actually kind of out of place because it's in its own zone, but so maybe we could drop it over here in the red or something like that. But even though it's sort of like out of its, yeah, right there actually, you can kind of see that all the colors fit very well with this scene here. They all sort of replicate it very nicely. And so that's really what the color theme is about. It's about selecting an image, getting a nice color palette, and then being able to use that color palette in the future. The next tool I want to go over is something known as the gap tool. And so when we're designing a document, let's say that we have this image right here. I'm going to go ahead and hold Control and Shift to bring this down to size. And let's say I copy this and put one here. So you can see that we have this gap right here. And to make the gap smaller, we have to click on one of the images and drag them over, move one of the images like this. But let's say we wanted to not touch these per se. We wanted to adjust the gap between these. And so that's the idea of the gap tool right here. It allows us to adjust the gaps between objects. It's just a different way of looking at it. And so, for example, when I do this, you'll see that it's adjusting where the gap is, and it'll cut into or make the other one smaller or larger. And you can hold the control key and that'll shrink it down or grow it. So if you see, we can shrink it. Let's back to the original here where they're both the same size. If we go to the center here and we shrink it in, you'll see with the control key held, it's going to bring them in uniformly. And if we go like this, it's going to push them out uniformly. And we can also hold the shift key. And what that's going to do is it's going to basically do exactly the same as holding the regular mouse button. So what I'm trying to say here is the shift key doesn't do anything. The control key is kind of the biggest change here. And then if we hit the Alt key though, the Alt key is going to allow us to actually move the entire entity where the gap is, but the images are going to move as well. So we can move the two images, like let's say, bring them both to the center here. So we can kind of keep the gap intact, but at the same time, move the images with the gap. So it's just sort of a different way of looking at how to lay out your documents, a different way of looking at how to move your documents. Instead of looking at the assets as themselves, you can actually control the properties between the assets as if they were their own properties. So yeah, just kind of a really neat sort of tool there. The next tool we're going to talk about is the page tool. So that is right, the third one down. Usually it looks like this page right here. And what this is going to allow you to do is to control the pages on your document. So basically the sizes of the page. It'll allow you to control it really quickly. So if we just click to drag it, I'm highlighting it right here so you can see that little dialog box that comes up. It says drag to preview liquid layout. And then Alt drag to change the dimensions. So if we drag it right now, you'll see that nothing is happening. And then now watch if I drop it over here. It always defaults back because changing page sizes is big because it's going to change everything inside the page. So what this is doing is allowing us to see what's going to happen. And it's allowing us to control the liquid page rule. So the liquid page rule is how the elements inside of the page are going to react to the page changing size. So for example, object based is usually a good one because that's going to just control the dimensions of the objects relative to one another. So you can see like when I shrink it down, they're just all kind of shrinking inside like so. But we can also, and that you can see that when I drag here, it's just showing me what's going to happen. But if I don't hold Alt, it's not going to keep that change. We can also go scale, so this will allow us, as we shrink it down, it's going to scale the images down as well. We could go off of recentering them, trying to figure out the center once they're gone like so. And then one of them is guide based, so you can actually create guides and have them center off the guide. So for example, if I dragged one like right there, it's going to adjust off of the guide like so. So yeah, there's just a bunch of different options to create sort of these pages, and if we need to change our page dimensions, the page tool is usually the way we want to go. Now if we want to lock in these changes, all we have to do is hold down the Alt key, click, and then drag, and now once we release the mouse, you'll see that it actually saves the page dimension. So it's sort of like, you know, a gun. You have to turn off the safety before you actually do it. And in this sense, the safety is holding the Alt key down. That'll release the safety and allow us to actually change our dimensions. And then once we release the Alt key again and the mouse again, it'll lock those changes in. And then now, since we don't have the Alt key held anymore, it will not allow us to change the dimensions any further. And so the last tool I wanted to talk about was the pen tool, the pen/pencil tool right here. So what this tool does is it allows us to create objects, to create sort of free form drawings, just like, you know, a pen or pencil in real life. If you have a mouse, this tool probably isn't going to come in handy for you because it's very difficult to do anything meaningful with a mouse when it comes to drawing. Usually you have to get like a tablet, like a Wacom tablet or some other drawing tablet, so that you can actually get the movements like you would in real life, the micro movements from your hand. So you see, if like, let me try to draw a circle with the mouse, you can see that it comes out pretty bad every single time. So a lot of times this isn't going to be very useful for you. However, knowing it's there is pretty nice, because if you do have a drawing, if you do want to write or sign something, if you do have like a Wacom tablet or something, you can actually use this to create your own sort of drawings on the scene. And then with this, it'll actually also create, it creates a path in a sense, so you can actually use the text on path tool, and you can drop that on this path, and you can actually type on this drawn out path. So again, if you had a tablet or something that you could draw around something, create like a really neat design, you could type on that path as well, and it'll make it look really, really nice. So that is the text, the pencil tool right here. Like I said, might not be that important to you, but some people it can be, and it might be essential to their workflow. And that covers some of the tools that we didn't go over earlier, but some of the tools that I think you guys might have some value with.